All right. Well, we are not live, but you will be watching this as a recorded version. But I am here with Steve, a.k.a. RealmWalker of YouTube. And so I want to welcome Steve to the program and share a little bit about what we're doing here. But, I started doing some series of testimonies from folks about not only flat Earth, but about faith. And I had listened to Steve's live stream last week, and he was doing some sharing about recent events in his life and kind of some faith, revelations and epiphanies. And I was really interested in that. And so I reached out to Steve and I said, hey, I would like to have you on my channel and do just like an interview and maybe share some testimony. So Steve graciously accepted. And so we're going to share a little bit. Mostly he'll be doing the sharing. I have a few questions for Steve, but first of all, welcome, Steve. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Appreciate it.
I'm excited. So we first met, I think it was last summer at the South Bend, Indiana meetup.
Yeah.
You and your buddy Tim, Flat Earth City from YouTube came over for the meetup, and we're sharing a little bit about some of your activism. And you had those cool trifold flyers that you passed out. That was the first time that I had seen those. And it was great to get to meet you guys. And I don't know if you're aware, but we had our latest Toledo area meetup. I think it was about the 5th time that we've met up in Toledo a couple Sundays ago. And your buddy Tim came over from Chicago. He came for the meetup, and he has a sister in Detroit that he was coming to visit anyway. So he was able to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and it was great. It was great to see Tim. He's got a great attitude, and we enjoyed having, at least one Chicago person at our Toledo meetup. So maybe in the near future, we can get both of you guys to come over, and you could do some sharing about your activism and things like that. But today we're here to talk about you and to let you share your story. So tell us a little bit about yourself, if you'd like to just share some general things before we get into more specifics.
Sure. Okay, so it's kind of tough to start, but I guess I've spent the majority of my life as a starving artist, I guess you will say, just kind of going through the typical hardships of what a starving artist would go through, not really having a dependable, steady income. Some say that's lazy. Maybe I was a bit lazy. I'm not gonna lie, but I dedicated most of my life to just exploring my talents and just seeing what I can do. And I've done everything from like sculpting to painting to mural artwork, illustrations. I just about did it all in the art world. And I've lived a very crazy life and had some wonderful experiences, but a lot of it has led me up to where I am here today. So it's quite a journey. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I know you'll have some more specific things to share, but real quick, how long have you been in the Chicago area?
Pretty much almost all my life. There was short periods of time where I actually lived with my dad in Florida. There was a short stint where I actually, when I first started, when I used to be a tattoo artist, which I just formally renounced, and that was in Tennessee. So that was one thing I did out there. It was sort of like my college years of art, kind of the live on campus sort of vibe. Pretty cool.
And you've been back to Chicago now for how long?
It's been quite a while. Let's see. I came back from Tennessee when I was like, in my early 20s. I spent most of my life in Chicago. I just recently got married and moved to the suburbs, so that is quite lovely. Okay. I'm close enough to the city where I'm literally like 45 minutes to drive, and I'm there. So
cool. Yeah. All right. Well, congratulations on your marriage.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been a pivotal moment in my life, along with many others. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, my wife and I, we got married young, right out of high school, and so this July we'll be celebrating 27 years of marriage, which makes me very excited, but also makes me understand that we're not that young couple anymore. We're that middle-aged couple that's been together for more than half of our lives. But Anyway, well, let's dive into some meat here. So, first question I have for you, Steve, is
Sure.
how did you kind of begin your overall truth journey, and how that led up to the whole flat Earth thing?
Well, it's actually quite simple. 9/11, as many other truthers have gone through, the traumatic events of 9/11 was kind of a wake up call. But it really started when I was living in a loft on the south side of Chicago with about 5, 6 other people. It was a huge loft. All right. So we were literally like 2 minutes away from downtown, very close. And when everything kind of went down, we were watching the live events. So one of the first thing that actually made me realize that, well, basically just acknowledge what I felt in my heart, that nothing is what it seemed, is when the whole thing where they said that the plane hit the building. I watched a video. There was no plane. The very next day, me and a bunch of friends were watching the exact same footage, and there was a plane. And we all talked about just openly, like, "Hey, don't you think it's strange that there's a plane now and there wasn't a plane yesterday?" And I think that's what did it. And then I was actually, because I was going to college at the time. For a short period of time as not a graphic designer, but actually I originally was supposed to be computer animation, but I never finished college. Let's just say I hung out for a year or two and then that was it. But during that time, I was like staying downtown, and it opened my eyes to the fact that there was a lot going on that we weren't being told. And I saw, like, all the weird culty behavior between certain people and things. And I started to kind of piece things together. I found out about the Freemasons. Like, so much happened that year, but then I put it off on the burner. I put it off on the side, and I was sort of like also spiritually putting off my spiritual awakening as well, until it wasn't until very much later when I actually started waking up and everything kind of came to fruition. So
so that was kind of your entrance there, and you did a lot of thinking about it, and then, like you said, after a while you kind of put it on the back burner for a bit. And then how did this the whole flat Earth thing come to fruition for you?
Whew. Well, it was the most painful thing. I'm not even going to put it lightly. I was not a good person when flat Earth came into my life. I was literally losing sight of what was right and what was wrong, because I was adopting the doctrines of this whole, spiritual science. You're going to become God. This whole concept that you are in control of your destiny, and where you go from here is up to you. And because I was following these doctrines, I didn't realize it, but I was actually substituting my morals very often and putting myself in very bad situations and degrading myself, as a human. And that's kind of what kicked it off, because I had a few moments right beforehand where I have spoken to God and pleaded with God and saying, like, if you really do exist, if this is really a legitimate reality that, you control, you have to let me know, because I don't know what's going on. And something about that conversation changed everything. All of a sudden, I was making weird notions that I never made before. Like, I was standing on my buddy's front balcony porch, and this is where when I flash back to, like, when the flat Earth realization, this is the first thing that popped into my head. I'm standing on my buddy's front porch. We're out in the middle of the night. We've been drinking, smoking, whatever, doing all the bad things, and then here I am looking at the sky, and I said, don't you think it's strange that these stars kind of always stay in the same spot? And if we live in space, like, shouldn't they be like changing positions? Like, what's up with that? And I remember this is what kind of kicked it off. This is actually what I sparked back to when I first realized was the amount of cognitive dissonance I received from my best friend, my very close friend. He literally kicked me out of his house because I made mention of that. And then I also, for unknowingly, now this is the Holy Spirit working through me, unknowingly, I made mention of the fact we were watching Nova too. It was on the TV. And I said, isn't it strange how there's always CGI and this and this and that? And I remember he was just getting irritated with me. Like, I was just asking the wrong questions that day. And he kicked me out of his house. And at the time, I was kind of bouncing around. I didn't really have a place to go to. So it kind of knocked me on my butt. I was like, whoa, you're my best friend. You're throwing me out in the street. What's up? What's up? So yeah, that
Well,
was
his reaction was very strong,
very
and
strong.
it's interesting, Steve, because a lot of people have shared how family, friends, coworkers,
Yeah,
acquaintances that you've had this discussion with, they have such a strong reaction, and they have sometimes a stronger reaction than almost any number of other, out of the box topics. And my wife
yeah,
and I were just talking about this again last night, and I was talking about this with Chris Bailey of Take on the World conferences, and we were sharing how one of the reasons why there's such a strong reaction, like with some of the people at the church that I
yeah,
used to be with. It wasn't like I was teaching even anything publicly, or like I said, hey, polygamy, yeah, we need to do that, or, we need to do this, or we need to do that. I was just simply trying to take God at his word and to study out and to seek out, these things, whether these things were so. And I was seeing a disconnect between what modern science was claiming, was creation and the system of life, and what the Bible clearly stated in Genesis. And so, we lament over that because we're like, well, I don't understand why there was such a strong reaction. But as Chris also pointed out, because there's a spiritual component to this discussion, because this discussion at its foundation starts to bring people, at least in their minds, to have to consider and deal with the creator. If
hmm,
if
yep,
creation is real from what the Bible states, then there's a creator. And if there's a creator, then I'm going to have to deal with this creator. And so I think many times it's on a subconscious level. But, even though you didn't come right out and say, like, isn't it weird how the earth's flat and it's not a spinning ball? I mean, you were already getting into, deep territory
yeah,
of indoctrination, of, spiritual strongholds,
yep,
suppression of the truth.
yeah,
And so anyway, I just wanted to interject that. But so you share these things with your buddy,
yeah.
he kicks you out, and now you're just kind of like, whoa, what am I doing? Where am I going?
And
So
then,
what
so
happened after that?
fast forward to, okay, like things we make up, we make amends, whatever. Fast forward to, where the realization really started taking spark when I actually found the information. I was staying in an apartment, right? And in this apartment, I had two other roommates, and then um, honestly, like, people kept moving out, so we kept replacing them. And then it was because at the time I didn't realize this, but it's because I was living in sin, and I was basically granting permission for the demons to enter our home
Mm,
and mess with us. And that's exactly what happened. There was so much weird things that went around in that apartment. And around that time, I lost I was with a living girlfriend at the time, obviously living in sin, and then also I was living in sin in other ways. I was drinking, doing drugs, whatever, just having my share. And I started losing my roommates, and the next thing you know, I'm like in this apartment. It's literally like a 4 bedroom apartment, huge. I'm paying. It was like the rent was $2,500 a month,
oh
and it's just
wow,
me by myself. And then, like,
yikes!
I'm literally hustling. Like, I was at the time, I was just trying to do any work I can just to pay the rent. And at one point in time, I had to tell the landlord, like, I can't even afford to live here. So he allowed me to live there like 2 or 3 more months. He gave me some grace time if I
Nice.
showed the apartment to people that he was trying to rent. So, um, so anyway, I don't know why God was nice. He should have knocked me on my butt, and I should have been on the street because I was such a horrible person. But around that time is when I found out about flat Earth, and then I started looking into this stuff. Somehow I still had internet in my house. It was like the only thing I had. I had electricity and internet.
So
So
what year was that, Steve?
um, I believe it was like 2014. I might have my facts wrong, but I feel like it's been since the beginning. Like,
So
basically,
2014, 2015 for
yep,
sure.
yep. So
Okay.
as soon as I think it was like, as soon as Mark Sargent just joined the scene, as soon as Celebrate Truth just joined the scene, as soon as, like, all these other YouTubers, like, we're really starting to blow up, like, Eric DeBay. That's when that information was really hitting me.
Mm,
So yeah, so I started coming upon this, and then it made me question my beliefs, because I thought I was the gonna be God, remember? So, like, in my head, I was like, I'm gonna attain this sort of like spiritual, wonderfulness, and
yeah,
become my
Nirvana.
own.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, it was such a lie. and all it was doing was just inviting, you know, bad things into my life. And then I started thinking about, you know, wow, okay, the earth is probably flat. I've already had these questions. I started flashing back to, like I said, the conversation with my buddy on the porch. I started flashing back to all the bad things I did in my life. I started thinking about conversations I've had with God. And then it just started hitting me. I was like, this is the proof that I was asking for. God is real. Like this ultimately is what I was asking for. And that started my
Nice.
journey into changing everything. I moved back in with my mom. I stayed and it was the perfect time. I don't know. God wanted me to move in with my mom because my mom was going through a horrible depression and she was kind of spiraling downhill. And the time I seen her before that, right before I moved in with her, I saw her and her face was just like, she just looked like she was dying. There was nothing wrong with her. She was just, it
Yeah.
was just all the sadness that she was going through and experiencing was really wearing on her physical health. So when I moved in with her, in the beginning, it was wonderful. I was trying to help her, you know, like telling her I love her, you know, happy to see her, happy to spend time with her, trying to be a good son. Because, you know, I have this new realization that, you know, hey, nothing is as it seems. So that kind of started my journey. I started picking things apart about my life, things that I didn't like. Whenever I was doing something, I started like, you know, boiling it down. Like they say, you know, you're not on fire for God unless you're constantly rebuking all the things you do. Like you have to constantly be like looking at yourself and saying, that's not right. I got to change that. That's, you know, and then when you get there, then you find other things that are not right. Like
Yeah.
before, things that I thought were okay, halfway through the process, I found out they weren't so okay. I was lying to myself. So
Yeah, I
it's,
mean, examining yourself and, trying to humble yourself before God and,
yeah,
walking his commandments and truth. I mean, it is a journey and, immediately we see things because when we come to the light, it shines in the darkness, it shines in the dark areas of our lives and it can be kind of shocking sometimes, but then there's other things that, have been over in the corner somewhere that maybe we just never recognized or we kind of left it there and then one day it comes creeping back in and so when we're humble and when we're reflective and we have a heart of repentance, then those things continually are adjusted and overcome
yeah,
in our lives. And so it sounds like that it was the providence of God working in tandem with your prayer, with his will, your mother's needs, the truth about the creation. And
yeah,
so, it was probably an encouragement to your mom to have you, live there. And it must have been quite a realization like, oh man, I'm going to be my own God and life's just going to be swell. And then all of a sudden your roommates abandon you. You can't even pay your rent. I mean, wow,
yeah,
if this is being a God, like, man, this sucks,
yeah, yeah,
So
exactly.
you kind of, in some senses, you were kind of hitting bottom.
Oh yeah,
You were hitting just a challenge that you just wouldn't be able to overcome by yourself. And so God transitioned you, and at this time, were there? I mean, you were already kind of coming into the truth of the true creation, but was there anything real specific that you were just like, oh wow, yeah, like this is totally true,
yeah.
or was it just a combination of things?
It actually wasn't until a little bit later after that because it was sort of like on my journey I'm starting to recognize that God is real and all these things. So other things like the flat earth stuff, it was just like I was just kind of doing my research on that, but I was kind of sort of suppressing that side and that realization. I knew it as a personal truth, but I didn't want to share it with anybody at the time. I didn't want to do anything. It wasn't until actually I started my RealmWalker channel where things really took a turn because I realized that what I was trying to do is just devote myself wholeheartedly to God, you know, and it was just a journey of recognizing that because in the beginning it's like I always kind of knew it. I always felt it in my heart. My entire life, you know, I can't explain it. I don't understand, but there's been times where I've gotten, you know, messages from God like telling me, "Hey, you need to do this or you need to realize this." And somehow blessing me even though I was in sin, even though like
Yeah.
I was far from grace and God still was there like, "Hey, I'm still here." Like, you know, I haven't given up on you yet. And so once I kind of started the Realm Walker channel, it was just like, okay, now I have to do something. I have to do more than just, you
And
know,
when did you start the Realm Walker channel? What do you remember the
uh
year or about how long ago it was or?
2017, I think.
Okay.
I have to check my my channel. It feels like forever. I can say
Well,
it
it's
feels
been
like
going
5
for
years.
probably almost, 2 years or so.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yeah, a little over 2 years, and it's been a journey because like I originally started as like I was doing illustration. I was like, how can I use I was still trying to be my old self and bring that to God, not realizing that God didn't want that me, like I'm like, hold on, he did, but in his own way, like I don't want to assume, but
Sure.
basically it was like I started doing like illustrations and putting flat earth music and being like research flat earth, and then occasionally doing like a debunking video here and there, and it was just like it was never enough. Everything was never enough. I was still working at a tattoo shop. I was still living partially in sin, like 1 foot in the door, 1 foot out the door, not knowing who and what I am. I was still kind of going through the process, and also at the same time battling demons on literally like on a daily basis, like constantly battling. And now it's like, okay, it's obviously becoming way more boiled down, way more clear for me on I don't know exactly where I'm going from here, but I do
Mhm.
know that I am
Steve, you might have muted your mic. Check your mic there real quick.
oh, I did
There you go.
accidentally.
Yeah, so back
Sorry.
up like 20 seconds.
So
So
so I'm sorry. So
no worries.
anyways, so basically I was saying that, I'm continually to boil myself down to God's needs. I pray to God literally every day throughout the day, now since I've repented, which I'll get to that in a second.
Cool.
But yeah, so I've been praying to God and asking for, God to show me what it is that I'm supposed to be doing, what it is I can do, how can I fulfill his work? You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
that's kind of
Awesome.
where I'm at now. I think I probably jumped over the whole story,
Well,
but
that's an exciting place to be. It's also kind of a scary place to
it
be.
is.
I mean, I can tell you just in my own life, I got fired September 14th of 2018, a few weeks after the Take on the World conference, and it wasn't until it was just right after the Take on the World conference, literally as we're driving home from the end of the conference, it was about 11 o'clock at night, and we were saying, okay, what do we need to do? God, what do you want us to do? What do you need me to do? And my wife and I started fervently praying as a couple. And then as an individual, the next few weeks, I was really intensifying my prayers and just saying, God, I feel like you want me to do something, but I don't know what it is, and I don't want to just, launch out on my own. I need you to show me, like, show me
Mhm.
what is it that I need to do. And as soon as I started praying those prayers, man, everything got flipped upside down, but
Yeah,
so it was kind of like traumatic in one way and scary, but also very exciting. And in a strange way, it was very freeing to know that, okay, this is not how I expected him to answer this prayer, but he's in total control here. I have to completely rely on him.
yep,
And I need to try to stay humble and stay seeking his will. So yeah, you're actually in a very powerful time because it's kind of scary. There's some unknowns, but at the same time, it sounds like your focus is very much honed in on seeking the will of God, and that's when He can use His servants. Isaiah, here am I, send me.
yeah,
So I'm excited for you. I'm also be praying for you because, as Satan is the adversary
yes,
of the congregation of God, of the people of God, and he definitely doesn't want folks like yourself to wake up and smell the coffee, so to speak, and to
so
take,
true.
the focus off of what we want to do and say, what does God want to do? Because you know for many folks, they've had a faith for a while, but they've kind of just been doing their own thing, or just kind of on cruise control, or selfishly focused, which is what our culture teaches us to do. So anyway, yeah, please continue. So you're in this mode of really seeking his will for your life.
Yeah, yeah. That actually, I might as well just go ahead and address it.
Yeah,
So
go for it.
like a few days ago, I repented on my channel, but I also repented in my real world, in my real job. I was tattooing for most of my adult years as a trying to be a person of profession, and yeah, I literally just went on Instagram. I told everybody I quit. I quit tattooing. There's still a lot of people hitting me up. I'm still dealing with that on a daily basis, and a lot of people were very distraught, very upset. I got a little bit of support. I got, like, couple of the close friends gave me a little support, but basically I kind of threw in the face of everything I was doing and said, you know what, I will no longer do this. I will no longer live unjustly in God's eyes. I'm going to change my way. I'm going to do what's right. And ever since then, I've been very, very serious about my passion of where I'm going and doing God's work. I totally repented wholeheartedly. I gave myself up to God, and I also have been reading the Bible as often as possible all throughout the day, and I've been learning so much. And God has made it obvious, like, all the things that have been happening since then prove that it's a legit thing. For anybody out there who hasn't repented, who hasn't actually gone through the process of repentance, and that means giving up all the pleasures of this world, giving all of them up and saying, you know what, I'm going to change my way. I'm going to live for God from now on, no longer for myself. It's God's world now. So that's essentially what I did, and that was, I literally just gave it all up. I do everything I can, to live by all the commandments. I've learned so much. So let me just say something real quick too, because this is why I'm so excited right now, is because so much has been happening, and God has touched my life, and I'm so happy about that. And it has made me a new man, like a new spirit. And a lot of the things that have been happening. So I had problems. Like, I started reading the Bible, and I started having, like, hangups. Like, I'll just go out and say it. I'm a vegan, right? So I don't eat meat. I don't eat flesh. I believe that it is considered, in my opinion, I'm not judging anybody. This is obviously a relationship between, myself and God. But I felt on my end that, that was considered murder, because murder it's in the Bible. Do not kill. Thou shalt not kill. So even though it is in the Bible multiple times about meat. So when I started reading, about Cain and Abel, and then I saw this is where it's going to get interesting. So I don't want to go. So I'll just go ahead and say it. So I was reading the story of Cain and Abel. I was talking to my wife, and I was saying, I love God. I know God. I know there's a message deeper in this that I just don't understand. But why did God reward Abel, who gave the flesh of an animal, and then not Cain, who gave him vegetables from the ground? And I was so conflicted, and I was, like, kind of upset a little internally, like, that doesn't sound like my God. That doesn't sound right. And I started doubting God's word. I was in the wrong, because God taught me a little something. So I went to church this past Sunday, and I went to a Christian church. This is my buddy's church. He's a flat earther, so I wanted to go see him play. He plays for the congregation and everything. So I went to go support and to be in the house of God and to worship God. And when I got there, I was a little disappointed, because I started seeing things that were not okay in God's eyes. And immediately I was kind of taken back and a little heartbroken, because I expected to sort of walk into sort of fellow people that are really doing what they can. And I'm sure they were. I'm not judging anybody. But like I said, I walked in, and then all of a sudden there was red flags everywhere. And I was like, okay, God's not okay with that. God's not okay with that. That's not cool in God's eyes. But hey, who am I to judge? So I'm listening to this female preacher, female pastor, who takes the stage, and she's wearing a skirt, and she's showing a little bit of chest. And I'm just like, okay. So I listen to what she has to say, but somehow God brought this full circle. And he actually showed me something about myself by observing her. And I'm going to tell you about this. This is actually quite impressive. I mean, I'm impressed with the way God works. I literally am, like, an absolute, I'm just, wow, taken back. She started talking about the story of Lazarus' sisters.
Yeah.
And this is where it kind of goes full circle. She got hung up on how she got basically hung up on Martha. Martha is the one that actually, went and talked to Jesus and says, "I know you're the Son of God." And she said, "But Lazarus is dead, and you
Mm.
could have stopped it. You could have stopped it." And when the female pastor was talking about her, she was talking about her in a position, like in a personal way. Like she was saying that she was hurt that Martha got kind of the short end of the stick in that
Yeah.
situation, because she was the hard worker. She was the one who was like, head fast, in our eyes, we would have saw her as the one of righteousness. And then
Yes.
and we would have saw Mary as the one who's like, she was sobbing in a corner, didn't want to do anything. She didn't want to have nothing to do with nothing.
She's a slacker.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
So she's talking about her in this way, and then I started reflecting on the story of the Cain and Abel, and I started seeing something.
Mm.
I saw that when she got to the end of the story and she talked about she started speaking from her personal perspective and saying how she wanted to interpret it as this and she wanted to see it as that. And then I started to see something. I started to see myself in her. I started to see how I was feeling about the Cain and Abel story, and I started projecting my personal beliefs and my
Yeah.
understandings. And then I started realizing, like, no, this is what God wants me to see, and there's a reason. It's because one individual, and you may not agree with me, but this is how it kind of unfolded to me. On both sides of the story, you have one individual who is just doing whatever they can do, you know, um, with their heart towards God, and then you have another individual who's not doing everything they do with their heart towards God. They're doing everything they can do with their heart towards their lives.
Yes.
Their mind and their heart towards their lives. So one is projecting outward and the other is projecting inward. So you have Cain, who probably didn't, I don't know, I don't want to insert anything, but we know that sacrifices were a thing of the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
We know that that was a thing. So in God's eyes, Abel was abiding by his law, whereas in Cain was trying to usurp the law to insert his own feelings and understandings of what he felt was the right way. But he was operating rogue, he was operating on his own, concept. At least this is how I'm taking it. And that's the same thing I got with the Martha story, because she kind of was just like, she recognized that, Jesus was the Son of God, but at the same time, she's coming at it from the mind. She's like, you should have done this, you should have done that. Where the other one just gave her heart openly and just did whatever,
I mean, Mary sat at his feet and was just trying to soak in the time that she had with him. And, Jesus is basically like, look, Martha, you're so worried about so many things. And, basically I'm not going to be here with you long. Mary's chosen the better part, the better use of her time. And I think that those are great illustrations, Steve, of, where people's hearts are at. And I think most people could agree with you, myself included, that that's a good assessment of what was going on with Martha and Mary, and also with Cain and Abel. It obviously, there was something wrong with the heart, the focus, the desire, rebellion, whatever it was. We're either choosing submission or we're choosing rebellion. We're either choosing to please self or choosing to please the Father. And
exactly.
So how, that connects to, what you were thinking, what you were feeling, and you realized that, some of the things that you were focused on was just like, this is what I want to do. And it kind of sounds like once you really started to seek the will of God, you got convicted about, the tattoos. Was there a specific aspect of the tattooing that really troubled you or caused you to, say, man, I don't want to do this anymore?
Yeah. It was basically being in legion with Satan, because it wasn't the necessarily the artwork per se, but there was a lot of artwork that, like, for instance, one of the very final clients that I dealt with, and I actually talk about this on my channel. This is when I repented, and I talked about what really drove and motivated me to do the right thing. So yeah, one of my last clients, he kept stressing, I want this evil tattoo. I want it to look evil. I want it to look evil. And then here I am just trying to like make it not look so evil and try to fit my, try to like make it work for me, when in all actuality, all I, like I was giving, him what he wanted. And the interesting thing is that when I told him that I cannot do this. I'm repenting. I'm turning myself over to God. I will no longer be tattooing. The exact opposite happened. He actually was inspired by by what I was saying,
Wow.
and literally told me that from there on out he was going to start seeking God's grace. And
Oh,
that
wow.
was
Awesome.
really what took me back, is that God literally just made it abundantly clear, what my stance should be and how I should
Yeah.
be doing this.
Well,
So
and that's interesting because, sometimes when we take a stand and we're so bold as to tell people, hey, look, this is where I'm at, man. Like, I'm changing my focus, my direction, and I'm focused on God. Some people will just kind of stare at us like bewildered, like, are you some kind of kook? Some
yeah,
people
yeah,
would get ticked off, like, well, man, because you shared in your stream, that he had put a down payment down and it was kind of a continuation of some work arrangements he had already made. I mean, he
yep,
could have been real angry. He could have been frustrated. He could have said, well, you lied to me and all this other stuff. But his response, I think, most likely was so strong and so drastic in a positive way because you were so adamant in your faith. It wasn't like you were like, well, yeah, I'm going to do this, but I'm kind of trying to seek God. And well, we'll just see how this goes. I mean, you were like, hey, dude, here's where I'm at.
yeah,
I can't do this, and I'm done doing this, and here's why. And you just came right out and said it's because I want to be focused on the will of God. And
yeah,
obviously that made an impression on him. His heart was pricked. He got some conviction there. And it's interesting because it wasn't just like, yeah, I want a picture of a tree and some names of my family members on it or something. I mean, he was like, I want this to be like evil, man, like help me
yeah,
to make this evil. And so it does kind of seem like, there was a spiritual component there. And, you chose the path of righteousness. You chose the path of, I want to be pleasing to God,
yeah,
above all. And, maybe 10 different people in your situation might have chosen differently or whatever. But, you have to go with what you believe, is the conviction, is the leading that God has given you. You've been praying, you've been studying, and all of these different events have kind of seemed to culminate. So correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like for at least several years you had a measure of faith, you had a belief in God, but it seems like most recently that's when things have gotten serious enough where you kind of evaluated yourself, you were taking stock of the spiritual side of your life, and realizing that the spiritual and the physical things
yep,
are really connected. And it sounds to me like you got in that mode kind of like where I was for a period, 6 months ago, where you were like, man, I just want to really focus on the will of God. And he's been revealing these things to you.
yep.
So that's really cool that I watched your live stream when you did your testimony, and I posted it on my Facebook, and I was like, man, you guys got to listen to this. You got to check this out.
Oh,
And
thank you.
I was moved by it. I was like, yeah, I really, of course we had talked a little bit in text message and stuff, and I was like, yeah, Steve's a really nice guy, easy to talk to, and I could just sense that you were at this moment in time where, you have this powerful focus, and, you're starting to share that testimony of where God is leading you. And so I was like, man, I definitely want to see if I can get Steve to share this, because I have had at least one person that had shared a testimony, and it had been a while, been several weeks since I had someone on, and I've had lots of people say, "Hey, man, I'll come on," and I just kind of like, I would love to just have everybody on, but I really wanted to kind of reserve this, series, if you call it, for when I really feel like someone is, at that moment where they're very focused and there's a testimony that's coming forth, and to take advantage of the timing of that and say, "Hey, would you come and share that testimony?" So, I don't know if there's anything else regarding the faith journey and the changes that you want to share, but we got up to the point where you just laid it out for this friend,
Yeah.
and he was, pricked to the heart as well, and was like, "Hey, I'm going to do that too."
Yeah. Yeah. And, even like my wife too, our relationship has improved somehow, even though we're more financially stressed, more, I guess in the thick of things,
Hmm.
but somehow, my deeper connection, with God has like brought us closer together. And I'm very thankful for that. Like
Yeah.
I really do feel like, um, I really do feel like, you know, God makes it abundantly clear that He wants you to serve Him. And when you start making those communications, when you start talking and having a personal relationship and walking with God, uh, God makes it abundantly clear that yes, He's very willing to do whatever He can do to help you get there.
Yeah.
And the more you communicate with God, and the more you ask God for His grace and wisdom, the more you see it. It's so obvious that it's true. If anybody out there even doubts remotely, just put your faith in it, because you'll see that
Yeah.
literally it is real. It's more real than anything else I've experienced in my life.
Sure.
So
Yeah, and it's not a putting God to the test in the negative sense, but it is a taking God at His word, and
yes,
you said that faith.
yep,
Before I got fired and our whole direction shifted, like I was 100% certain, I knew that He was going to answer this prayer, and
yep,
and I knew because He's good, and because He's not going to leave you hanging. When one of His servants says, "Hey, here am I, send me, show me." He's not going to toy with us.
yeah,
Sometimes we have to go down, further down the journey before, like you said, like we are ready, because maybe our focus isn't right. We
yep,
all have had those wanderings in the wilderness, so to speak. I've had a couple of different, wandering periods in my life. Thankfully, they weren't 40 years long, but, one was like 5 years long before I went back into ministry. And then other ones have been, 6 months long or 2 years long. But also, as you pointed out, even though we weren't behaving as we should, our focus wasn't where it should be. We weren't, pursuing righteousness like we should. But we can look back, and in hindsight, we can see where God was with us. And it's just like the Israelites, their sandals never wore out. They had the manna, and when they needed some meat, God sent a strong wind, and here comes a bunch of quail. I mean, He provided for their needs. He provided water when they had none. And so, even though His stiff-necked, stubborn, complaining people, you know,
yep,
we're not just in continual awe at His deliverance and saying, "Okay, God, how can we serve you to the fullest?" His goodness, His character, His promise to Abraham and and their forefathers there of Israel. He said, "Look, I'm still going to, make my purposes happen. My word isn't going to return to me void." And so that's exciting, to see you on this part of your journey. And I'm sure that more changes, will be taking place. But you said a couple of things that I think are really key. Leading up to when things changed drastically for me, not only was it daily prayer, focused on the will,
yep,
but I was studying every day. I was,
hmm,
meditating on the word each day, processing it and trying to make application to my life. And so I can see that you're also doing those things. And you're in that mode where you're making it a daily thing. And
yeah,
I think that's so important to all of us as believers for our focus, because most of the time, we have periods where we're focused. We have periods where maybe we're in the Word and we're praying, we're communicating with God each day. But then we have long periods where we're kind of, to be honest, we don't have that daily focus. We're focused on something else,
yep,
making money or doing what we enjoy, our hobbies, or we're like Jonah, man. We're kind of running away from what God wants us to do. So yeah, I think that's powerful, and I think it's awesome that your faith also affected someone else. And I'm sure in the weeks and months to come, you'll probably have more things to report on your channel, and there'll be challenges too, but there'll also be, victories. And, you
Yeah.
know, I'm sure you're aware of this, but obviously Satan is going to be coming after you, because
Oh yeah.
he's like, man, I thought I had Steve was just kind of, doing his thing, cruising along. And now all of a sudden he's not just woke, but he's woken to, you know, the will of God. And so now you're a much more dangerous individual spiritually, because you are seeking to do the will of God.
Hmm.
So yeah, so you've shared a little bit as well about your faith journey. Is there anything else that you want to share specific to that, or
Yeah.
do you want to share a little bit more too about the activism that you and Tim do? What's
Oh yeah.
Flat Earth Chicago, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Flat Earth City. So actually, a little bit of both. So, I'm going to continue, obviously, to do my activism. I'm going to make sure that I present the Word of God also.
Awesome.
I'm not going to just glance over that or give the people what they want to hear. Like, oh, there could be, like I always used to say, I used to try to make everybody happy. I would be like, oh, it proves God to those who are religious, and then those who are not religious. There's more land. You could be your own king. I would just tell them whatever they wanted to hear. And it's just
Yeah.
like, no, I can't do that. I can't be that person anymore. So what I'm trying to do is bring that, to the forefront of my activism. Now, obviously, I have at least, 8 or 9 episodes to finish beforehand. So if anybody sees activism in the upcoming months, just realize that those were recorded very for a while now. So I'm
Yes.
just going
Yeah.
back and going to be editing and stuff like that. But from here on out, like, especially, we just went and did activism yesterday, and I made sure people knew that, the reason why they didn't want to see this is because they're living in sin, because they reject the notion of God, their creator,
Yeah.
because they want to live in the material realm and for the pleasures of this world. I made it abundantly clear. So I'm going to
Yeah.
continue to do that and see how it works and meshes with my activism style. And, first and foremost, like, I always, like right now, my passion is still with spreading the message about flat Earth, 100%, because how are these people going to come to the realization of God's existence if they don't realize that they're living within creation?
Yes.
So that is my first and foremost. Unless God tells me otherwise or sends me in another direction, this is what I'm going to be doing. So I'll be continually doing flat Earth activism on my channel. I also have right now a flat Earth activism live stream up called the Flat Earth Activist. I think it
Oh,
only has like 120 subs on it right now, but I do 24/7 live streams of flat Earth
nice.
activists across the plane. So
So that's called the Flat Earth Activist.
the Flat Earth
Okay.
Activist, yeah.
So hopefully folks will check that out. And I would be great if, some of those who support my channel would go over to RealmWalker, your YouTube channel,
Thank you.
push you over 1,000. I know that'd be kind of exciting, hey, I made it to 1,000.
Though I don't
And,
think YouTube wants that to happen, because there's been a couple of us activists that have reached 1,000 and were knocked back down to 900 and something.
yeah,
And I have been lingering in the 900 and I
yeah.
was 960, and then I went back to 940, and now I'm back to 960 again. So it's like they're trying to keep us.
They're messing with
They're
not
messing
only
with
the
it. Yeah,
algorithms, other things, but a few weeks ago I was having people unsubbed, and then I would post and they'd be like, yeah, I got unsubbed again. Some of these folks had been unsubbed like 3 times in a 2-week period. Some
man.
of them, the notification bell was being turned off. And I'm having the same struggle. Not that it's about numbers, but it's about knowing, getting the message out, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And we all want to reach more people, right?
Yep.
And so 1,000 isn't, special in and of itself, but it just shows that your influence is increasing, and your,
Yep.
the fruit is coming out. I'm sitting at like 1940, and I was kind of like steadily going up, and then this last couple weeks it's just like been down and down and down. Now it's like 1926 or something. And
Hmm.
some of that is, there's going to be some people that unsub you or whatever for various reasons,
True.
but it is, it is a thing. And obviously they don't want us to feel encouraged when we're
Yep.
having more support, when we reach certain benchmarks or goals. But so yeah, if you guys feel, if you've been listening, if you're interested in checking out his flat Earth activism, I know you and Tim pretty much do that in Chicago area on Mondays, correct?
Yeah, and can I plug
Yeah.
Flat Earth City? Because recently there was just an update on YouTube. Not a lot of people know this because most people that are above 1,000, it went unnoticed. I
Yeah.
didn't even see the notification until I tried going live. But there's a new update which says that if you're under 1,000 subs, you can no longer live stream from your
Oh,
mobile
wow.
device. So,
Bummer.
and Flat Earth City, I don't know if you guys are familiar with his channel, but all his activism is all via his mobile device. So
Wow.
basically, they just shut down his channel because
So that
now he can't.
severely hamstrings him. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he doesn't have a computer, and he doesn't know how to edit. It's like that's not his thing. He just goes live and does it. And he
Yeah.
does it for safety reasons too, because you know the fact that it's live is a little bit of a safety harness, because it says to people, if they start getting out of pocket, be like, hey, you're live right now. I hope you know that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and he's there with a sign and everything. He's sort of like a target. So
Yeah,
but
and with the activism, obviously, when you stick your neck out there,
yep,
once in a while you get somebody that either verbally or physically, wants to knock your head off.
yep,
And
yep,
Chicago, as you guys know, some parts of Chicago, people are pretty rough or pretty assertive,
yep.
and especially with not just an out of the box thing like flat earth, but it's a trick, it's the number one trigger right now,
Oh yeah.
pretty much flat earth. They're cracking down on 9/11, um you know conspiracy folks, and I call it a conspiracy fact, but anyway.
Yep.
So yeah, so if you guys are listening, consider subscribing to RealmWalker's channel, the Flat Earth Activist, where he's got the live streams there, and Timothy's channel, or Tim, that's Flat Earth City. And now I might have been confused, but tell me about Flat Earth Chicago. Is that kind of just a group of folks in Chicago that you're associated with, or?
Yeah. So
Because
so
I've
I
got the original one that you guys gave us
oh yeah.
at South
There you
Bend
go.
with the Flat Earth Chicago. So I just tell me
Awesome.
about this Flat Earth Chicago deal.
So I started Flatter Chicago around the time I started, a little bit after my Realm Walker channel, and right before I met Tim, actually. And yeah, so originally I didn't know this because I didn't have a Facebook, but apparently there's a Flatter Chicago Facebook group,
Oh, okay.
which I wasn't familiar with. I actually have met since then many people who are involved with that, and they're awesome, and I love what they're doing. They're amazing. But I started Flatter Chicago. It was just to let people know that there was a group out there, even though it was just me at the time. It was me by myself proclaiming to be a group of individuals. And I started putting ads on Craigslist and stuff like that. Said, hey, would you like to join Flatter Chicago? We're going to be a meetup group, yada, yada, yada. I started a meetup, and I started getting
Nice.
people signing on. And I had my first meetup, and that's where I met Tim and Niku and a bunch of other great flat earthers. And actually, not a lot of people have heard of Niku, but Niku is amazing. He was a part of one of the first laser experiments over Lake Balaton a long time ago, and he was one of the first guys out there actually doing it. And he brought his P900 and everything to
Nice.
help with that. So I got to meet him. He was a beautiful guy. He's no longer in Chicago anymore, but now it's just me and Flat Earth City. And unfortunately, we have 100 and something members on our meetup group, and yet nobody ever really shows up. And it is so frustrating because yeah, nobody shows up to meet up for the lunches. They don't show up for the activism. Something seriously going on in the
Yeah.
world where there are people waking up to flat earth and don't want to do anything, or
Yeah.
don't want to have any part in it, and that
Yeah,
to me is scary.
a lot of people I think are kind of like closet flat earthers, it's like
Yeah,
they don't really do anything publicly, but they have a belief. Like for instance, we had somebody that from the Toledo area, from
yeah.
South Toledo, who wasn't a member of the church that I was fired from, but they came to a meetup recently. And then they messaged my wife and I later, and they're like, "Oh, I know someone from the church that fired you, and they're a flat earther, but they don't want me to name any names." Like, in other words, so there's actually at least I know of a couple, but
Yeah.
another flat earther at the church that fired me, and they want to have total, anonymous, and it's probably because they saw how, how I was treated, and how somebody who even was just, giving it serious consideration
Yeah.
was shunned and ostracized and basically kicked out, fired, so it doesn't surprise me that however many flat earthers there are at the church. But it struck me, it was kind of like, really, you can't even tell me their name? Like, come on, man. Like, why would you bother telling me that? Like, why would you tell me, oh yeah, I know this person and blah blah blah?
Yeah.
It's like, you know what? But you're not gonna tell me anything about them. So thanks a lot,
Yeah.
But maybe one of these times, my wife and I could come out, to Chicago and support something that you guys are doing. And
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
and it would be great to get some more of that deep dish pizza. We went, my family 4 years ago. We all flew up to Anchorage, Alaska, which is my hometown.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing my younger brother's wedding at age 30. He was finally getting married. And so we drove to Chicago, stayed the night, and we got some really good tickets out of Chicago. That was a nonstop from
Wow.
Chicago to Anchorage. It was like 6.5 hour flight, but we stayed at a hotel, and we weren't too far from a place called Giordano's deep dish pizza. And we went there, and of course we're a family of six, right? And and I'm no slouch, so everybody could tell that with 4 teenagers and 2 adults, we could put the hurts on some pizza. But anyway, so we're used to ordering a lot of pizza, right? And we're like, yeah, we need one of these and one of these and one of these. And they're like, no, you don't understand, like, these pizzas are substantial, like, they're thick, and you really, that might be too much pizza. And we're like, no, you don't understand. We're the wolf pack, man. We devour pizza. They're like, okay. So they bring out these huge pizzas that weigh like 5 to 7 pounds a piece,
They're like birthday cakes, man. It's
exactly, made of cheese. And so anyway, we put the hurts on it. We were all just like busting at the seams. We were all like uncomfortably, overstuffed. We had gluttonized ourselves, and we still had like 1.5 pizzas left. So we're flying out tomorrow. We've already had more than our fill. Like, what are we going to do with this pizza? But anyway, so Chicago, as you know, has some great eats. And of course, we would go there to support you guys. But if we went all the way to Chicago, we would have to at least, do some type of Chicago food while we're there. But
And I don't know if you've ever been on Lakeshore Drive in Chicago, but it's quite a magnificent drive.
I have not. We would definitely need to do that.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's
So
beautiful.
maybe we can coordinate something, and maybe we can have you and Tim out sometime together to Toledo. And we have Maumee Bay, which is right on Lake Erie here. So we could bust out some cameras and go out to Maumee Bay. And even north of us is Michigan, and across Lake Erie, across Maumee Bay, you can see some of the smokestacks, and one of the it's Davis-Besse nuclear power plant. You can see that it's probably, like, I'm guessing it's several miles at least. It may be even like 10, 15 miles, but you can see those across the water. So it'd be kind of cool. We could do like a miniature, curvature experiment on that.
Oh yeah, always fun.
But that would be great. But
Yeah.
so yeah, man, I'm excited that this worked out today to have you on, and you shared some great testimony about your life, about faith, and what you're doing right now, trying to seek God's will, making changes that you've been convicted on. You've shared with us about some of the channels and activism that you're involved in. Is there anything else you want to share, or especially too, if somebody wants to support the work that you're doing, how would they do that? How could they reach out to you? Is email the best way to contact you?
Yeah. So you can go to any of my activism videos, and in there you have there's for support for PayPal if you want to help out that way. If you want to
Awesome.
get involved in our meetups, that would be actually even better, because right now we have nobody involved, and what we need is an army out here. So if you're in the Chicago area and you want to join our Flat Earth Chicago meetup, just go on meetup.com, type in Flat Earth Chicago, and you'll see us.
Nice.
We've got about 100 and something people, like I said, but we need more doers and less thinkers. So
Okay, so you heard it, guys. Go
yeah.
to the channel, subscribe, watch some of the videos. You can see the links. They do have a Patreon, which can help them with some of their expenses and some of their activism and whatnot. And you can go to meetup.com, look up Flat Earth Chicago.
Yep.
And have you guys done any advertisements for your meetups at all, or?
Not yet. Not yet. We're actually working on that. But actually, can I plug something
Yeah,
else?
go for it.
Me and Tim, for like the past few months, have been working on a little bit of a collaborative project, and we basically started a print shop, a t-shirt printing shop. It hasn't really gone public per se yet, but we do have
Nice.
our online store open and up. It's called Plain Tees Online. Like plain as in the flat plane we live on.
Okay.
But we also bought plain as in regular, just in case anybody messes up out there. So yeah, we got that. We're still I'm still working out the look of the site. So right now it looks a little like, I use a template. So
plaintees.com.
plaintees.com. Right now, it's a simple Google Sites linked to a big cartel, but we do all of our t-shirt printing. We have one t-shirt available. I wish I had it on. I could show you,
Cool.
but I'll have it up in a little bit. But if you go there, you can find it. It's the only one for sale right now, and it's a Flat Earth shirt in like a graffiti bubble letter style. Pretty cool.
Nice.
And yeah, so we're getting that up and going. So hopefully, by the time this gets out, you guys can see something cool.
Cool. And is there an email that works for you if folks have a question or want to coordinate with meetups or any of that?
Yeah. We have flatterchicago at Gmail, and then we also have Red Pill Chicago. Red Pill Chicago is the email we use for all our activism. It is on every flyer that we put out. It's basically there for anybody who wants to reach out, even if you have questions or whatever. That is our go-to. And then
and that's redpillchicago@gmail.com.
That's correct. Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's it. I guess that's it.
Okay. Hey, man, we've covered a lot of ground in about an hour, so that's just about the perfect timing for folks' attention span. But I know this has been a very interesting, hangout, testimony, and I also just wanted folks to have that chance to hear about you and Tim and what you guys are doing in the Windy City and around the Windy City area. And so I really appreciate you, taking the time, Steve, to come on and share about, your truth journey, your faith journey, what you guys got going on in the Chicagoland area. And, let me know what I can do to encourage you and help try to get the word out. If I can share some links, from time to time, and we'll stay in touch, and maybe we can coordinate some Chicago, Toledo efforts, now
Sure.
that the weather's starting to get a little nicer, and we've got spring and summer, before us. But I thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure. Steve's a great guy to talk to, easygoing, fun to hang out with. So I'm sure we'll do more in the future, and maybe I'll have a chance down the road to have him back on the channel and share some updates. But if you want to subscribe to Steve's channel, you can go to RealmWalker. If you want to subscribe to Tim's, that's Flat Earth City. And you can also go to the Flat Earth Activist if you want to check out the live stream, Flat Earth Activism there. So, Steve, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I really do.
All right, don't go anywhere. We're going to stop the broadcast here, but I'm Nate Wolf, Fired for Truth. You can reach out to me at nate@firedfortruth.org. That's nate@firedfortruth.org. You can check out my website, which is firedfortruth.org. I also have a PayPal direct link if you would like to donate to my ministry and to the immediate needs of my family. I thank you so much for all of the support, the encouragement, the mail, and especially for those prayers. And please continue to be with Steve in prayer as well as he seeks the Father's will and as he's being directed in those areas. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the chat. We're going to do this as a premiere, so it'd be great to just look at all those comments and see your feedback. So thank you so much. Take care, and God bless.